right. Good evening, everyone. It only took 17 tries to get these 5 viewers, so I want you 5 viewers to know that you are golden goats. And I see you, and I freaking appreciate you because talk about frustrating for all of us. So, to start the show, let's start with it's the Treat Show, episode 46. It would be very hard if we didn't have technical difficulties at some point to really keep this going. So, thank you. Thank you for hanging in there. Also, I would like to shout out Dark Horse, even though this is probably not the appropriate time. I will say that we've had some really special guests and some cool things going on this last couple months that it is so nice that Dark Horse lets me use their studio and not only use the studio, but Jason helps me with the show's audio and all kinds of things. So, what? Oh, we know their show's better than ours, but listen. Gerhardt, Y, Joe's, Russell, who was in the chat? Appalachian Outlaw, thank you. And I also saw, I'm so sorry because I didn't get to glance at the name, but I did see your chat earlier before my technical difficulties for the 18th time. I saw you in the chat and you said it was the first time you got to catch us live. So you come back on here. I know it's frustrating. And you come back on here and I'll make sure to shout you out. Ghetto Hippie, Pardon, Dr. Chronic, I really want to say thank you. I know that sometimes it can be rough. Also, I would like to shout out Laszlo and Michelle. Laszlo and Michelle have had my back multiple times, probably every time, and I've never had that in my entire career or life, where you guys have my back when I get some haterade in the chat. I know Andy loves to talk shit on everybody's chat, so Andy, if you're listening, I can't even take you personally because you talk shit on everybody's show. So if you really want to hurt my feelings, you better stop talking shit on other people's shit. So you better go harder today. You better go harder and you better start talking more shit because anybody that talks shit on my channel or myself, I do not delete your comments. So keep it coming. Keep it coming. Thank you, Dark Horse. We're getting the dog squad out of here. I got 3 dogs. Anyways, Mr. Toad, I freaking love you too. Audon, Godan, sorry about that. Hey, yeah, I made it, J-Lo. Good to see you. It's better to see you. Thank you. So tonight, I'm obviously feeling spicy. You know, whenever there's stuff that like messes up with whatever you're trying to do, me, a podcast, surprisingly, is, you know, it can be really frustrating, but I will say it stands out so much when you have these people that are so good to you that keep logging back in. They really stand out. So, yeah. Laszlo and Michelle, I would just want to say that every time that somebody has talked shit on my show, every time that you respond, I really genuinely appreciate it. I'm not saying that I don't and couldn't use some improvement. I definitely can all the time. And I will be honest, starting a podcast was not my plan at one point in time. And I really didn't think I'd have the personality for it. And I would like to thank Adam Dunn for that. Is Adam Dunn, they helped me get more familiar with this fear and into it. And then the people in the chat that stayed watching my show and his, yeah, I just really appreciate you. So let's just get into it tonight. All right, I'm going to hit this blunt. What the hell are you guys smoking? Tell me what you are smoking on because I am smoking, the strawberry slobber knocker. I don't think strawberry's in the name. I'm going to be honest. I think I just made that up. Hold on. No, it's strawberry slobber knocker. Okay, the reason is I don't taste strawberry. Whenever I think strawberry cough. This is not what I'm smoking right now. Is the slobber knocker tastes kind of like an OG. I know that's not like very descriptive, but it's kind of like that like bland flavor from what I'm tasting, okay? But get you pretty high. So we'll see how this conversation goes in a couple minutes. I'll try to describe it better. Okay, so I watched Dude Grows podcast today, and they were talking about genetic drift. Like, I think it was their most recent show that they did, and Fake Sour D Gerhardt. That's hilarious. Basically, probably. I mean, I feel like I'm smoking sour diesel every time I get high now. So, thank you. Let's just call it Kim. Um. Anyways, just kidding. I think that it's it's interesting is when I was listening to their descriptions of this genetic drift in plants, is I was like, dude, I'm gonna show you guys how to clone on the show one day to clone out of these issues. But today I just want to touch on and show you plants from my grow room that are my personal mom room. So I know this is weird, but Tommy one time, um, well, I'm not gonna tell you the Tommy it was, but he mentioned to me that he had these strains that he had been working on and breeding for a long time, and he had gotten into situations where the plants started looking different and the flowers started finishing different. And I've talked to a lot of breeders that will take their own cuts and see over time this drift in whether that's quality of like the actual representation of the flower, the density, the potency. These are some things, the flavor especially though. Let's emphasize that. The terpene content, the flavor that you're actually, the profile that you're pulling from the plant, when you smoke it is definitely what I am hearing from all these breeders when they're like, yeah, I have the same cut, but, or it's my cut, but it used to run different in 2013 or 2014, whatever time period. So when I was listening to the Dude Grow show, they brought up a lot of incredible points of cultivating and some of the battles, but I'm not going to say I disagree, because disagree just always kind of makes a bad taste in everybody's mouth. But I want to show you guys through a long process. I want to show you these sick ass plants today, and then I'm going to clone them and probably show you cloning them next week. We are supposed to have a special guest, so I might have to sneak in a show. But I'm going to show you cloning them, and so that you can see them tonight live and you can see the real deal, and we'll break down kind of like some of the sicknesses and illness in the plant. And then we can watch this clone change. So I'm going to take clones from different parts of the plants eventually. Like I said, we'll do it together, but so that you can see when people are actually talking about these things, what in the actual fuck they are talking about. Because I keep seeing people talk about HLVD and Fusarium and Pythium and Botrytis, and the significance and importance of the knowledge in knowing how to identify a sick plant when you get it, or going through the testing and really honing in this. But I also want you to see as home growers that there's a lot of stuff that we just don't have to waste our time with. Like, and what I mean by that is there are scientists that specialize in this. I personally specialize in this as a cannabis cultivator, but I feel like we don't need to specialize in this. That's the truth. We don't need to know everything to everything. That's something that's been a pressure in the weed industry from the time I started, and even home growers, is most times I feel like we devalue ourselves, right? Like automatically, like society, bosses, people, we all have to like integrate and adapt to like somehow being less than sometimes for cultivating weed and caring about it. So the reason I want to talk about this and show you over a realistic time frame of treating these plants out of it, and how you can do it off of any budget, that you don't need a commercial facility, you don't need all these products, you don't need all this testing. Do I think that testing is extremely valuable? It's extremely valuable to somebody that wants a black and white answer and needs a black and white answer for P&Ls at the end of the year, profit and loss, right? But that's not extremely valuable to me, if you're growing your personal batch of flower, you're like, yeah, I got to be able to see my sick plant, but I don't need to know if this is Fusarium versus Botrytis. Like, I just know my plant is sick. So I don't know. I'm going to show you plants that have have a little bit of everything going on. Rusty Nails is so good to see you too. I will read your question in 1 second. I'm so sorry, but yeah, I just think that we're getting confused from the start. And one thing I cannot stand about the cannabis industry is how you take a whole bunch of experts in niches of it, and then you put them in a room and you hear them all discuss it, which is extremely valuable. But a lot of them don't have crossover with experience. So you have the scientist that has never cultivated weed. You have the weed cultivator that has never done the science behind what they're trying to express, I think, or communicate, or validate. So I don't know. I want to bring them together for all of us. But before we get into the technical details, is I'm going to treat this the same way I treat a job. It's great to know the technicals details, of everything. When it's actually applicable to like what you're doing. So I don't know, is I think that starting with the sick plants and showing you what it looks like, and then showing you the transformation over time, and showing you various products. So I'm going to take cuts from different strains. I'm going to take cuts from the same mom using different products, and show you along the way how you can approach this. So those that are organic growers that would not prefer to use any insecticides or pesticides for that matter, we'll have a different approach for that. And if you want to use microbials and beneficials, we'll have a different approach for that. And the beauty to all this is we're working with Toomey Genomics. God, I'm all over the place. Sorry. Who does all the testing throughout this process. So they've been able to test my plants really, really hot with this systemic disease, HLVD, which we're all familiar with, and Fusarium. And then they've also been able to test my plants, let's just say 6 months after, and see that the plants are clean. So I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of information that is out now, and I do appreciate it, and I love that we're talking about it as a community, and I do really respect all the people that I mentioned in this for their research and development. But I just want to show you the real life deal. I haven't seen it on somebody else's podcast. So when we were talking about genetic drift, when they were talking about genetic drift today on Dude Grows podcast, I was like, this is like a weird misconception that I was kind of like stuck in at one point in time of my career. And it's weird because I see the value in both sides of looking at this from multiple perspectives. But if we take HLVD, because now we're kind of scared of it, is HLVD has been around, I think, for a long time. We can at least say 10 years. But HLVD takes all of these other diseases accumulating in a plant or surfacing before it will surface, before it will become something thriving in these optimal circumstances. So I think if we start with Fusarium, is way more detrimental than anything in cannabis I can personally think of. I'm sure you could find something worse if we were really going to get crazy with this. But what I've actually seen take out gardens rapidly is Fusarium. I've seen aphids do a lot of damage. I've seen spider mites. I've seen fungus gnats, russet mites, all these things, right? But the worst thing I've ever seen is Fusarium. Even HLVD is manageable. You can get these plants to run and finish. No, it's not your most primo weed. No, you don't want to go compete. But can you smoke it safely? I'd say so. From research that I've seen, from testing, from consuming it, yeah, I'd say so. But it's not ideal, right? So anyways, I'm going to show you plants that have Fusarium, because Fusarium, to be present in a plant, most likely has HLVD. At this point, we can say that they correlate with one another. And if you're looking at diseases, it's like that with all these things, botrytis, pythium. And so the thing that I've noticed is like HLVD is being like really emphasized, but it's not being deconstructed for the representation that it causes, like the detriment that it causes. So Fusarium, I wish I could kill these plants right now, but we'll do it when I clone. Is when you cut open these stalks, we've talked about this a little bit, but when you cut open these stalks, you see the plant is struggling to uptake its nutrients. Like, to simplify this, it's struggling with uptake. So when you struggle with uptake, you're going to develop root rot. And people think root rot, I don't want to say what people think root rot is. I retract that, is I would like to say that once you have your plant cutting itself off in any way, in any type of nutrient source, so it's not just nitrogen, it's all of these things. So when somebody comes up and they're like, your plant is deficient in X, Y, and Z, it's like, yeah, you're absolutely correct. The plant is deficient in those things. But what is making it deficient in those things? So that's your HLVD, that's your Fusarium, that's your botrytis, that's your Pythium. Pythium, to simplify all these things, Pythium is more often or not, I'm not going to say this guaranteed, you have to get it tested to guarantee these things, but consistent symptoms that you visualize is Pythium is algae, right? Those growing with rock wool, those growing with any sterile medium, period, is very susceptible to creating a microbial surface that, for instance, algae eats the same thing as weed. It prefers the same exact lighting spectrum. It prefers the same 12 and 12. It prefers the same nutrients levels. It has this ideal medium to be able to thrive on. So that's why I talk about the importance of H2O2 is I wouldn't grow rock wool ever without using H2O2 because I'm using rock wool because I'm creating a sterile development of my clone, right? So if I can't keep it sterile, it's not sterile. So I know this is weird to say, but if you have your rock wool where it's starting to get like a slime on top of it or like an algae buildup, you probably have symptoms of Pythium. This is not guaranteed. Like I said, there could be other factors, but you probably have Pythium going on in your garden. And that's why you're seeing the algae. So if you can use the H2O2 to combat the algae, is the algae won't hurt your plant, but the algae will harm your plant once it develops an actual film across your rock wool block or the medium that you're using. When you really start to see it almost sealing off the top of your medium, it really is closing off that root ball. Like you'll notice that the roots on the outside of the pot will be thriving. They'll be very white. Sometimes they'll be really healthy looking. Like you'll take your plant out of the pot and you'll see these thriving roots. But then when you actually go deeper and deeper into the stalk, consistently I see, depending on your plant size, is 1 inch to 2 inches off of the root ball. You'll start to see this puddling and this rotting. And when I say rotting, it's not what you'd anticipate. It's not black and gross and stinky. Sometimes it can be. But for a plant that's really combating it and keeping it in check, it'll more be like you get this gap from the root ball to the mass outside where it'll be this 2-inch diameter where you can see the first initial transplant and you can see almost the water band. You can see where the roots start to weaken. And like that taproot or their fingertips are really starting to like almost squish and like get that pale brown or something like that. They're not thriving. But then you'll see that once you take your fingers right out of that section, you'll have these like thriving bumping roots. And that's usually when you're combating something like this. We'll go into, for the millionth time, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep doing it, but a parasite and a pathogen, right, that's what's creating a disease. Most commonly for weed are the 3 that I've listed off for with HLVD, but because it's a virus, it's slightly different. It needs those as hosts to begin itself, but you probably have one of those going on. So what I've seen consistent is when you get aphids, aphids aphids tend to really rapidly decline a plant. I would say more than most pests. I will break this down one day on a chart of the severity of damage. I think that correlates with these diseases, from pest to disease. There's finally starting to do research on this independently as labs and cannabis as a whole now, in these recent years, which is exciting, but you can actually see it. We talk about looking at the plant all the time. If we just remove some of this noise, is you just got to look at your plant. So I'll show you with these plants tonight. But I think that like botrytis, before you get to fusarium is something really common where you'll see like the browning in the leaves, or like the yellowing, and it almost looks like calcium deficiency, sometimes monopotassium. But again, monopotassium is really beneficial. So when you see products like Moab, I'm just going to use, because that's a pretty common one, is 0.5234. 0.5234 is the monopotassium phosphate levels that I like to add to my mix. So if you look at a Moab container, I think it's pretty close to that. They'll tell you to only use this product in the weeks of flower from like week 2 to your finishing time. And not all the way to your finishing time. They'll have you like kind of like taper off of it or wean off of it. But when you see monopotassium phosphate, just like our NPK on bottles or any measurements like this, what you need to understand is that monopotassium phosphate is honestly acting like almost like a silica. You don't have to use silica, for instance, if you're using a concentrated monopotassium phosphate like Moab. If you're using a base nutrients that is just covering your base nutrients, is it will have monopotassium phosphate in it, but they'll be too low of levels, if you're trying to maintain this to prevent pest and disease issues long term through your full cycle. From what I found is, if you just bump it up just a little bit, is it really prevents that rot. So like a lot of tomato farmers use it, to prevent like rot within tomatoes and things like that. And you just gotta, I don't know, these little tricks I found. So I think that if you add your monopotassium phosphate, no matter where you're getting it from, you just gotta be careful that you're not getting too crazy when you're combining products. But if you add just a little bit, it will really start acting like almost like a resilience builder, against some of these things. Same with the H2O2. We know that fusarium transfers, even with H2O2. The reason why I even believe that is because your plant is now being dominated again with uptake issues. So if you have, when they talk about cross contamination and the things to look out for in the garden, so on your trays, that you're actually watering in your runoff, obviously. If you're looking at easy cloners, if you're looking at trays, even with rock wool, you have a sterile medium, but you're putting it in a shared space. Probably better than a peat moss clone to start. I'm going to be honest as far as keeping it sterile. But I think that you're constantly looking as a preventative measure from the start of their lives. Because if they build this resilience, you can be exposed to aphids, fusarium, HLVD, all these things, no matter, I can't say how contagious they are. There's different levels. So yeah, higher levels, this probably wouldn't work, gonna be honest. But good practice is if you keep them separate as much as you can, right? Eliminating as much as we can with this cross-contamination. But if we're also realistic, like I'm not going to go through, even as a pest and disease specialist, do I know that there's cross-contamination in my clone tray? Absolutely. But do you think I'm going to water every individual clone with a solo cup and feed? No, I'm not. I have thousands of clones to do. Do I know that would probably keep my clones healthier? Yes. But at that point, you're starting to gamble. If I put 30 clones in a clone tray, That's the perfect humidity and climate I need to control this clone tray. If I take only sick plants and condense them in a 30 count clone tray, I'm going to inflate this disease, right? It's not going to help me. It's going to emphasize the disease because I'm keeping it condensed. Versus if I spread out these clones, which everybody's going to disagree with, is if I spread them out with healthy plants, sick plants, everything, and I put them in a clone tray and I water them, where I always pour over my tray, pretty sloppy, honestly, because I like the humidity to be pretty high in my dome. So I won't leave any more water than like will exceed the lip of the indents of a clone tray normally. Is I'll pour just enough to where the roots are still reaching for it. But I'm not really trying to get them to share water. You know, I'm not swishing the tray back and forth. I'm not pouring them into each other. I'm not letting it flood and then pouring them all out. I'm really trying to keep a pretty accurate measurement to feed all of them, you know? And so equally. So when I look at this, is if you do pour too heavy, I'll just be honest, is like just pour them out. Like just pour them out, hold them. I know it's annoying, but it makes a tremendous difference. So when we're talking about genetic modification of things, is everybody, I think, visualizes this weird lab, and you're like cutting up these little pieces and you're like putting them in a little tube and you're like, whoa, you're so healthy. This is like, I don't know if it's like that. You know, I've worked with tissue culture and all these different things. And the reason I don't sell tissue cultured clones, and the reason that I don't sell and do this and practice this as a business, is not because I disagree with it. Because I have done it as a business and I have done it with plants, is it's not cost effective and it's not realistic and it doesn't build the plant's immunity. It's this ideal climate to grow in, and then you're going to introduce it to something that is not ideal. That to me is not ideal, right? This is how pest and disease issues start to evolve aggressively. It works against you, right? This is how you get things to work against you versus helping you. If I take a plant and I expose it to the same sickness that it got exposed to, and I slowly adapt it to healthier circumstances, right? Is you're going to see parts of this plant change. That's why I'm going to show you guys. But you're going to see things change. Branches, lateral growth, top growth, bottom growth, all these things. And we're going to take and pinpoint the best clones that we can off of this whole plant. And I'm going to put them around more sick plants. I'm not going to put them around healthy plants. Why would I do that? Is I want the health of the pest and disease issue to degrade, and I want my plant health to thrive. So maybe some scientists would go against me on this. I'm sure most of them. But the thing is I would rather put my plant in an unhealthy, contained circumstance than a healthy circumstance with a problem. The problem's only going to get more resistant, and the plant's only going to get weaker to the problem. I would rather take a weak plant, continually expose it to weaknesses, and make it really resilient, right? Like really resilient itself. So the reason I'm such an advocate for pesticides, half-baked, my friend, I know, but the reason that I'm such an advocate for pesticides is because I'm not an advocate for pesticides, is because I hate treatments. I am strongly against the use of pesticides, for lots of reasons, obviously. We all are, and we know them. But the truth is there a time and a place to use them and get your plant to build this resilience for a temporary time, because genetically it restores these plant cells to be able to be resilient. So and I'll show you on these plants, sorry, but you can look at your plants, house plants, weed plants, whatever you're looking at, a rose bush, whatever you're into, is you can kind of gauge an idea of how many days or how many weeks of growth have been in that top growth. The thing that people don't realize is, specializing with pest and disease eradication, the biggest fallback I've ever had is you can't change old growth, right? You can give me the sickest grow under the sun and I can probably make it finish. Is it going to be the most primo weed? Probably not, but I can make it better than it was going to be. But the thing is you can't change old growth. So that root ball is ultimately controlling everything. So yes, you can get a root ball to uptake better. You can get that outside growth to really kind of almost keep the plant alive and thriving till it finishes. You can foliar feed to supplement some of these nutrients that it's not actually uptaking. You can do a lot of these things, but ultimately you're trying to make the plant as healthy as possible and as resilient as possible, I think. So let's think about this. Cannabis affects the memory, Oh, you guys, killing me, Smalls. So if we think about this though, for reals, I'm just going to show you with these plants is you have only a couple days at a time to really take the healthiest growth of a plant. People talk about this so many different ways, and they talk about clones and degradation, and if you use a mom over time, and if you take thousands of clones, this is what happens. So the thing that's going to start to be discovered and like really shared in cannabis, I think, with all these transformations, hopefully federally, excuse me, is I think, excuse me, is we need to work together as a community before all this testing. Well, while there's testing, I guess it doesn't matter either way, but to really identify and look at the plant, because that is what we're taking pride in, right? It's like we're taking pride in being like, I grow better than you because I care more than you. That's really what it all comes down to. We all talk about all these like ego things, but no, the truth is just I care more than you. That's what we're trying to make a staple in. So I think if you take a sick plant and you look at those last 3 days of growth from the time that you do a treatment, you're going to be convinced that you're like, okay, these pesticides are good. If I set back the plant enough that this plant can actually eat its lunch or dinner, this pest is no longer taking from all of these things that this plant needs, and it's not on this like attack mode or this fight mode, is those couple of days are significant, right? So even though the old growth we can't change, is that old growth is going to have residuals because a plant is feeding through its entire self. The entire plant is passing every vein, every leaf, everything you can possibly imagine. That plant, every time it eats, is running through like I said, every leaf, everything. So when we look at the health of different parts of the plant, it makes complete sense. Is if you take factors like nematodes are the reason that we have a lot of these diseases. People like to argue nematodes, but there's a time and a place for nematodes. But nematodes are scientifically the root to why we have Fusarium, botrytis, and Pythium. And that is why we have HLVD. So when you look at the stunting, and I'll show you nematodes damage that they do, is when you look at the stunting and really identify it, is the only way that you can really beat a nematode is by a light spectrum, by its new growth outgrowing the nematode. Faster than the nematode's population can reproduce, you need this new growth. So the new growth will still have residuals of nematodes, but they won't have enough time to accumulate into a family that's now taken down like this decline, this soft decline, or kind of feeding a host, let's just say, because that's really what it is, to cause further problems. Is if we can eliminate the nematode, then you're going to be set off for success, I think, right from the start. So the reason I wanted to bring these plants tonight is because I have plenty of sick plants. For being a person that is supposed to have all the healthiest plants, I will tell you, I have the most fucked up grow you'll probably ever see all the time. So this is the thing. Is I want to use these plants to show you lots of things. But they're the real deal. So I'm going to start with chokeberry tonight because I bred this strain. And we've talked about chokeberry a little bit, but chokeberry really did take me 10 years to breed, not because of not because of whatever you're assuming, but because I had to take all the parents I was going to breed it with and not only source the real deal, but be able to fix and restore these these plants to good health before I bred them. So to take an old strain that you love is it goes against a lot of people's teachings on what they're saying about genetic drift. Is if I take Boo Kush, which is what I used, and Boo Kush has been around for a long time and has been in a lot of sick gardens. This is before HLVD or Fusarium or any of these things were really discussed, but let's just take an aphid-filled garden. And you see this plant, Boo, and it's just like, it's not that sexy. You're like, oh, it kind of has this subtle smell. It's kind of nice, but it's like not loud. The potency is like 21%. You're like, man, like all these different things. She wouldn't really stand out to you is my point. And when I seen it, I immediately fell in love with it because I was like, she's just not given the opportunity. She's not been given the opportunity to shine. A lot of strains, we've been talking about diesel a lot. Obviously sour diesel, it's like popping right now. And sour diesel is another one that you take from these time periods, and they say like they'll never get back the flavor, or it just doesn't taste the way it used to, or it just doesn't look the way it used to. So the thing is these plants, tissue culture, I'm going to try to simplify this, sorry, not go on a rant, is tissue culture is designed and works because you're taking it and you're putting it in a sterile environment that is the most ideal climate. It is sterilized 100% over and over and over again before it's placed in here. And you're keeping it in this tube before ever introducing it to anything that could possibly cause detriment to it. So what you'll see when you tissue culture, let's just say any plant, like, well, you could do it with a clone. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's different forms of tissue culture, and we can go into that sometime. But you're basically taking the main part where you would cut a clone. You're basically taking that little piece and giving it its most ideal placement, giving it its most ideal feed, setting it in this medium and forgetting it, right? And there's nothing there to attack it. There's nothing temperature wise changing. It's just this ideal, perfect situation. So the problem is you'll go to introduce that into a normal situation, that a grow that's reaching for these, ideal temperatures and all the details that we know, but it's almost too fragile. It will restore to its genetic point. You'll start seeing like leaves coming back. That's the most common one. That's why I always say it is you'll see plants that used to only have 3 leaves come back to 5, 7, 9, 12, like things that you've never seen before. You'll see the plant develop colors that you've never seen before. You'll see this smell, and oftentimes in veg. I know that sounds weird, but it will really be this like loud kind of beautiful thing from the gate. But the problem is it can't handle much. Is like the first time you introduce it to a space that the temperatures drop below 60, the stalks start going a little too purple, and it's not in the good ways. And you expose it to bugs, is you'll start seeing the leaves actually within a couple days, within a week, when you look at that new growth, instead of it having these beautiful leaves coming back, is it will start to go back to the 3, to the 2, to these mutations, to these strange things, right? And every strain is different from what I've seen, don't get me wrong, but I just think it's consistent. So what I've learned is patience, right? Patience ultimately between all of these things is, I think it's a blessing in disguise, as a dirty hustler can't do this and they never will be able to. They could even hire somebody and they wouldn't be able to do it. Is you can't be a dirty hustler and try to fix weed and try to sell your weed for the most expensive and all this other shit without really caring about the plant when we're dealing with these things. You can kill your grow and restart it, sure. You can use seeds, and people have a misconception with seeds. You still stand a really high chance now of having Fusarium in seeds. So our breeding stock, when we're talking about, again, genetics, is like the breeding stock was sick. I had to make sure that my breeding stock wasn't sick when I did this. And I don't know. If you have a lot of things, it sounds strange, but if you have a lot of things that once go awry, like say a fungus gnat and aphids and russet mites. It sounds like, oh, but it's like, no, it's pretty common. Is when you have one group of insects come in, usually not only do they attract other insects, but usually you have other problems that's letting the insects in. Usually you have cross contamination, probably. And you have probably a perpetual harvest where everybody's exposed to young, old, all these things all the time. And there's only so much you can treat. So you'll see strains decline so fast. You'll just see like the potency go down. You'll see like the bud structure. People will be like, this is mids. Like, or I hate this strain. This strain tastes like shit. And I think it's funny because if you can make her healthy and expose her to everything, expose her to everything, this is what's going to change the evolution of cannabis. Sorry for my rant, but this is going to be the positives to this. Is I think instead of using tissue culture only, I'm not saying don't use it. Don't keep using it. But you should be looking at this like with patience and an investment into your gardens. Is use this as a time to like challenge yourself and watch and learn how a plant can genetically restore itself after these treatments. The only reason I would ever use pesticides is when I see a plant actually be able to thrive. When I see it actually come back to itself, and it can be 30 years old. It can be like, I mean, any age or any circumstance that you can imagine, you can get these plants. As long as you can get it to stay alive, you can really work with it. It's just how much are you willing to invest? And the reason I want to use the plants live with you guys tonight is because I want to show you over the next 12 months, because that's super realistic. Is like the part of my job that sucks is like no commercial grower has 12 months to be like, yeah, let's do this. But the return would be so sustainable long term, and it makes the evolution of these insects, of these diseases, slow down. I really believe this, and I really would back it in a lot of affirmative ways, in my own opinion, is not just with photos and things like that, but actual, like there's this rewarding part that even if you never get acknowledgement for it, is when you see these plants actually go from like dying and just dudded, fucked up pieces of shit. Sorry, but where somebody's like about to like throw it away, you know, and they're just like, oh, it is not gonna come back. Is that these are the plants I'm taking in, you know, but it's like, oh my God, this is I-95. Like, how could you throw this away? Do not get into practice where you just hold on to gross, messed up stuff. But if there's something that you're really partial to, there is nothing more beautiful than taking it, using these treatments safely, and watching it week by week, day by day, have these centimeters of growth on the stalk. And you can actually define and see visually, like how much that plant started drinking and uptaking that day, that week, that month. Like, the more that you identify this throughout the process, the more that you'll be able to look at a plant and be able to be like, this is 4 days of growth. And like in these 4 days, my EC or my ppm was perfect. My pH was perfect. pH is another factor that I used to not be a huge believer in. And I hate to say that because it doesn't make sense. But I was kind of like the person that was like, I don't fill my res in like summertime, wintertime, fuck it. Like it's close enough. And if it drifted my pH from, let's just say 6.3, 6.2 is when you start uptaking micronutrients. So if it drifted from like 6.4, which is high, I would just be like, meh, it's okay. And it would go up to 6.6 in the summer sometimes, or the winter, 6.7, 6.8. I just like, not a big deal. But the thing is, it is a big deal. I challenge you this week, for all my growers out there, for reals, just as a small stepping stone, even with HLVD or bugs or fusarium or whatever you got going on, challenge yourself with just a bare minimum step of really making sure that your pH, I use 5.8 to 6.3. 5.8 is what I've always used with Rockwool. And cocoa is I like to stay between that 5.8 and 6 on the high end, if I'm like really being diligent about this. And then with soils, I like to use that 6.2 to 6.3 Definitely. So I don't know what you guys are into, but I think if you challenge yourself to really do it for 7 days straight and look at your new growth in just that 7 days, I think it just speaks volumes. And so I can't say that I disagree or agree with genetic drift. Because I definitely know that plants genetically drift. And I know that if you have a sick plant, like you're going to have these other things happen. So and it is going to like to me it's almost protecting itself. It's like going into this like shit because it's like still trying to stay alive, but it really isn't having its needs met. It's like really protective. It's kind of like defensive. I feel like it's got a little hostility versus the times that your plant is like resilient. Like there's plenty of gardens that I use pesticides on to treat their clones, and then we'll slowly get to a place that I can treat them all organically and naturally and barely have to use these treatments. And that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to build this resilience, have your plant be genetically restored and thriving. And then there's a balance. We'll do other shows and other episodes on this, and I'll show you with these clones. You can have a mom forever. The reason why moms are shit is because moms are always going to get sicker than everything else. Is if you have an aphid population, it's a hell of a lot easier to kill the aphid population in 1 gallon pots, 3 gallon pots, things like that. Way easier than taking a 2-year-old mom, a 1-year-old mom, and really being able to saturate and kill the source of where this is coming from. Even sterilizing the rooms, the way that these insects go dormant, all of these factors. So your moms are always consistently, I see the reason that people have so much dispute in this industry is like your moms definitely are going to decline. You have a declining garden, like hell yeah. And they're probably the source of it just because of the size, because of the mass. They have an ideal climate, an ideal circumstance for a lot of these things to thrive because of their age. They've had time to build resilience themselves. They've had time to protect themselves against these treatments, all kinds of things. So it's easier to treat young plants and it's easier to take back, clones from a sick mom and really take 30 clones and treat them as we're plugging them. We're going to do it on this show one day. And then you take those and we pull the best out of them. If you really don't want to pay for testing and some of these other things, this is the best way, I think. And I think you could prove this theory to yourself. Is we'll do the treatments together. We'll target all the pests. So that there's nothing we're not forgetting. So that, like I said, you can actually see the growth restore week by week. So I tell people all the time, the sicker the plant you give me, the better, is because I really want people to see it. And I really do like the challenge. At this point, I feel really confident because I've done it 1,000 times over, but I still have questions. I still have doubts. I still have all kinds of things, but do I believe genetic drift is something that you can restore? Yes. Do I believe that you can have moms for 30 years? Yes. Do I believe whether it's an annual plant or not an annual plant, they have been genetically modifying themselves because we're putting them in an ideal climate. We're making these plants run perpetually. It's weird to me where we cut off these lines of cure times versus, like, people will be like, Jay, you cure weed in Colorado and it's super dry there. And I'm just like, what the fuck does that matter? Like, it snows here. Like, if we're talking about climate control all of a sudden, like, I can grow weed fine in a place that snows, but I can't cure it fine because it's fucking dry. It's like the way that we come up with these weird rationalities or these weird reasonings is I'm like, no, we control every part of this plant. There's a beauty to it and there's a downside. Is if you can get these plants to restore exposed to bad things, that's my method. A lot of people would not agree with this, but I take all my sick plants and I put them in a space all at once. We can call it a quarantine room. We can call it a mom room. We can call it whatever you want. But I take all these cuts, put them in there. They have different severity levels that have been tested of different pest and disease issues. And I put them all in the space, expose them to each other, and I make them go hard. I don't make them go hard with my feed. No, is I want to make them happy, right? Like I'm not going to feed them a shit ton. Is I'm going to do what the plant needs. So I actually have to feed less. If a plant has fusarium, I can't feed it super hot. It's not eating. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going to apply a foliar feed twice a week. But you can't just apply a foliar feed and have it dependent on that. And you can't have the foliar feed start feeding all these other diseases, which it will. So I have to sterilize the space. So if I sterilize the space, then I'm going to make it susceptible to powder mildew. And it's like, I can't make it susceptible to powder mildew. So I'm going to inoculate the space. So I'm going to feed it. First, I'm going to sterilize it. Then I'm going to feed it. Or I'm going to feed it and then I'm going to sterilize it. Whatever it is you really want to start controlling and refining this space that you're doing this in, because the more resilience that they can build naturally themselves while you're helping them, while you're giving them a hand, is like, these are plants that are going to evolve in the better direction. Like this is stuff that we're not planning on using pesticides long term. We're not growing crops like that. We're not rushing shit. We're not anything. We're taking the best clone of the mom. We're treating this to combat the pest issue, because pests are really going to be, I think, still one of the biggest detriments that you're going to run into. So if you can kill the pest, as fast as we can kill the pest, the faster we can get new growth. The faster we can get new growth, the faster we can get a new cut that we never have to treat. And if you keep that new cut in that space versus tissue culture, where you're trying to introduce it to a sterile space, you reintroduce it back to that space. And guess what? You're probably going to have to do it again, because it's probably going to decline. And the thing is, though, is if you keep building the plant and you keep using pesticides and these treatments lower leveled, instead of increasing the pesticide, instead of increasing, like using a pesticide on an older plant and trying to combat the issue, we're starting young every time and we're keeping it low levels. So this pest isn't building a resilience, and the plant is. And it's just, I feel like if we could change our perception of some of these things, I think it helps. I don't know. What do you guys think? I think that I gotta roll another plant. I'm gonna show you these plants though. So kosher is another one up here. So Kosher Kush is she's my favorite bitch ever. I gotta say it with her. Is like, I gotta say, I have went through hell and back for this strain. And she is one of my sickest that I have ever owned. So Kosher is from 95. Is I know there's like a couple different kosher cuts even from that time frame that are out. The Holy Grail. You get the truth is this kosher was promised to me, just like everybody else that has kosher, to be the real deal. But when I first got it, once again, it was fucked. It was super sick, and she still is sick. That's why we're gonna do this together. And I've had it for years. And one time I got her really, really healthy, honestly, and somebody broke into my grow and stole her. And I wish I could just call the person that did that and just be like, how did it look? Like, how did it taste? How did it smell? Because I was so sad that they got to experience it and not me. She's a finicky one, but she's kind of like Ghost OG. Once you get her dialed in and she's healthy and thriving, that plant will repay you, just like Diesel, just like all that stuff, man. It's like they're so finicky. It's almost like the Z. They're almost so miserable and so difficult to grow, but then you get them dialed in, and it's not that they eat a lot. It's just, they just take off. So I'll show you her. And then, what is this one? This one is funny. Jack Herrera. So, oh, Jeff, don't leave us. I'm sorry if I pissed anybody off with my opinions on all this stuff or my rants. It's definitely on fire tonight. Okay, but the Jack Herrera, that's honestly, it was a 10K cut. That's what they called it. And I sold it for $10,000 back then. So when people think clones are super expensive now, no. But I'll show you her because she just looks awful and I won't let her go, right? I'm like, okay, this is one that's going to be a project once again. It's kind of like my moonshine haze. Got up to freezing today. Hopefully warm up coming your way tomorrow. It's just too cold. Oh my gosh, Hillbilly is it has been so cold. The last show that we did, it was -7 as the high that day. And God, it has just been irritating. The clone business, I'll tell you, from the cops to the temperature to the, I'm just like, man, I am just not meant to sell clones. Like everything is working against me right now. But no, I hope you guys are staying warm. It's just been a ridiculous January. Just, I see it. I see it. I don't know. Today I was going to say felt good, but it didn't. It was like, said it was 50. It was not 50. It was like super cold. Doesn't sound like it, but it was like all snowy clouds and wind. Anyways, has anybody grown Jack Herrera? I can't say it right. I know that Adam would always be like, Jay, you say it wrong. Herrera. I love it though. It's probably one of my favorite strains if you like to wake and bake. I don't know. I feel like a pretty high energy person, but not really. And Jack Disc makes me feel right. It's like it keeps you going. Doesn't make you sleepy, but it doesn't make you too anxious. But it has that like Durban-y haze kind of flavor to it. I just love it. But she dumps. It's like airy weed, but you still yield pretty good. Anyways, let's go through these. I had to roll my blunt first. I'm sorry. I've never tried this. You should have seen Jason's face when I was like just piling in plants. He's like, this is what you're doing tonight. Yes. So let me show you chokeberry. So the chokeberry is the Boo Kush. And the Boo Kush, the Boo Kush and the Straw Nana. So I love her so much. Jason hates it because it smells like a haze, but it honestly has no haze in it. And doesn't grow like it and doesn't taste like it. It's kind of like misleading. Let me see if you can actually see. The green screen is going to make it look shittier. So it's even better. And so, okay. So, let's take her down a bit. The screen is going to be impossible for me. Okay, so she looks awful. She just looks terrible. I don't know. Let me see. That's my Toomey little barcode. Just so you guys can see what that looks like. So let me see if I can show you a branch. Sorry, this is so bad. But, okay. So, this one, yeah, she's like, give me some love. Okay, so this one, we can see the difference in the size. She looks brittle. She's fucking sad. Put it close to the camera. I want to smell it. That's what's up, Marshall. Let me see if I can get it closer. Nope. Okay, let me see if I can do it like this. She really is sad. Barely. Yeah. I'll show you her new treated cuts after this. Well, not today, but we'll do that at an exciting time. But, okay, so you can see the skinny shit. Can you? Can you actually? Let me tilt this. Oh, God. I need backup in here. Okay, you probably can't see it. Sorry about that, guys. So, this, like, skinny, stupid. See how this stalk... Whew. Throwing stuff. Lip gloss ain't popping. See how these stalks right here are pretty thick. And then you see, like, this branch is, like, so... I could break it right now, and I'll show you. But this one's like a little bit thicker, but she's still gonna break, snap. This one's got it. This one's got it. So you can see where it's not only bushy, but the internodal spacing of the actual growth is like super tight together, like on every single branch. Like you get this really gross. Let me see if I snap this one. She's like super skinny. It's got that kind of like discoloration that we've talked about, reddish, purplish. Yeah, she's not looking. Sorry, chokeberry. Oh, see, you can see those little insects. Wish I had a close-up camera. I will get it together. Anyways, so you can see this like bad shit. Like this is like not good. This is, I mean, obviously the whole plant's not good, but I'll get a better camera situation going on next time. It's the first time I tried to do this. So anyways, she is just rough. You can see this really tight growth here. Even on the fan leaves, like you'll see it in your gardens when it's like dudded. Ooh, 1111. Thank you. Make a wish, everyone. You'll see this 3 here. Yeah. See, okay, so this type of situation, see the 5 leaves here, but they're like skinny, tight. She's got this growth going on, but it's like, it's just so tiny and stunted. There's no other way to really put it if we're trying to simplify this. So she has fusarium like a mother trucker. And I have other plants, those that are like chokeberry. I had a garden that got, it doesn't matter. But this is why I want to show this. It's because it is my strain. I did breed it, and I don't give a shit what you guys think. And as far as, I love them so much, and I want to fix her with you. So if you just see, this growth is not good. It's just not good. And this internodal spacing, whenever I talk about this is like an inch of growth, right? So when I talk about days, when I talk about weeks, this is what we're looking at. Is like, that is not healthy growth, right? Like if I try to snap this or if I try to move it, it's really hard. It almost has a firm, it's not as flexible as a healthy plant would be. Okay, so that's a chokeberry. I don't want to make a mess on the desk, but I kind of want to pull it out. I'll do the next plant. Jason's going to kill me. Don't tell him. Okay, so she's kind of like big and heavy. I'm going to have to clean tonight. Okay, so the kosher. Let me show you that kosher. 95 kosher. Sorry, baby girl. Okay, so I like to do the skinny pots too. When I'm doing this is when I'm treating them and getting them to grow out of this stuff. It's annoying, but I like to keep the smaller pots. So it makes the growth like this. Instead of growing out wide, this plant is obviously pretty old. And she's growing vertically instead of horizontally. So you can dictate that by your pot size. So anyways, this is a kosher. This one, you can't even see. She's taller than me. And she's not looking good. Once again, let me show you the pot. So in the branches, see how this already broke? This is a prime example. This is freaking nematodes. When I bitch about this all the time. Okay. It's not good. It's not cool. You can see how brittle. She's so top heavy. She's like, ah. So you see how brittle, you see how tough. It's not sexy, once again. You can see like the leaves, tight, duddy. So let me show you this. It's like, oh, come on, just do it. Yeah, Jason's gonna kill me. So the roots, see how white the roots are though? I will cut her next time when we do this together and take clones. But I don't know if you can see, they're pretty white roots. This is misleading. So look at the top of the plant. It's like, yeah. And then you look at the roots and you're like, oh, okay, she needs to be transplanted. Like, tiny root bound pot. And so rusty nails. This is why I showed this. I'm so glad that you said that. So you can't technically have a root bound plant in cannabis if you're running a perpetual cycle. So if you have a root bound plant, like you put it in a solo cup, right? Because cannabis isn't like this. This is why I say this. It's a misconception. So you can put them in as small as a space as you'd like, but you got to water them more often, right? So I'm not going to say that they don't flourish if you give it space to grow like that. Two different styles of growing. But you can put this plant in a tiny plant and you just make sure it's on drip irrigation. And the roots, what they start to do is they start to grow on the tray and they start to trail that way. And it's just a different style of growing because, like I said, instead of getting horizontal growth, you'll get vertical growth. It's more putting it at the top of your bud instead of throughout your whole plant. So I know you're going to hate that, and I know everybody's going to disagree with me, but the way that we cycle weed is so short term, usually, at least in commercial grows. I'm not saying that. I don't know. I used to grow with 15-gallon pots and all those things, 20s. Like, and the thing is there's a time and a place. Don't get me wrong, but the truth is they can thrive in a small medium. That's why rock wool is so popular. When you see 4-inch blocks, 6-inch blocks, like you can, yeah, air pruning. See, Big Farm, so awesome. Is I don't know, but you are right though. It's not going to be healthy like that. As far as if you're restricting them back and you're not watering them enough, especially if you're using salts and you're keeping them in a small medium, and those salts are increasing over time, not good. Sorry. Um, so yeah, this like stunting, all this stuff. So what I wanted to do is I want to take, like, you can see the top here, is I want to take and clone these. The Jack Herrera is the worst, I think. Yeah, let me show you that one too. This one's super fucked. Oh, see, I'm dropping plants now. Hold on. This one's the worst. Okay, so most expensive cut probably. Just kidding. Look how shitty she is. She's just like, oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah, see, I want to, you guys send me any other podcast that will show you their completely fucked weed plants because I would love to see that. That is why I'm here, guys. So, anyways, I want to show you because the Jack, let me show you this piece. Sorry, Jack. So the Jack, once again, is like so tiny. So sad. She's way worse than the chokeberry. The growth hair is even tighter together. This is a good one that I can show you. Nematodes damage. So nematodes live right in between here. It's really small, but between the nodes. But this one's a part of the plant that was affected more than the other parts of the plant. And thank you, Fazoli. Is these little notches here that I keep talking about is, a nematode is like, because it's a parasite, it's super tiny though. You can't see it. You can't see it from the outside there. It's not like crawling on me right now. It's inside the cell wall. So they're super tiny, super tiny. You gotta see them under a microscope. But the thing is they stunt. It takes them forever to get populated enough to really start dudding your plants out. But the problem is they start at the base of most of our plants. So like this Jack, I'm just so sad when I say this. Sorry, but it's just so perfect because she's like falling the fuck apart just when I do this. But okay, so this branch here, see how she's just like, I'm done, that's where these nematodes accumulate and they start producing sometimes these knots. There's different type of nematodes too, but so if you ever see like a weed plant though, before they start having like really fucked up growth like this and like looking super bad, is you'll typically see some like knotting and really skinny lateral growth. Like people will be like, that's a dwarf plant or a dudded plant. Most commonly when I see it, but that's usually when you have HLVD going on. This is an HLVD infected plant. If you guys want to see it, this is it. And CalMag, Jeff, I know you guys are like, this girl doesn't know. Oh, see, thanks, boom, boom. She is sad. I know these girls are sad, but they're probably the saddest that you could see a plant. That's why I picked them. Because I was like, what is the most fucked plants I have? And so these are it. So, yeah, because they're, again, valuable genetics. I don't think people understand why you hold on to sick shit. The reason why you hold on to sick shit is because chokeberry I bred, that's my pick. I'm never going to let go of that strain, right? And she's got a lot of sentimental value. We've come a long way. I honestly have healthy cuts of this plant, so this isn't like my only plant, but same with the Jack Herrera. Jack is just, it's called the 10K cut. I'm not going to I paid a lot for it at one point in time. And I'm not going to let this plant go away because I have a fucked mom. I'm like, okay, we're going to clone out of this together. Cuts now, LOL. Hillbilly, I know, it's so bad. Stony Creek, I know. Nobody wants to show this. Nobody wants to admit this. They take hold faster in an unhealthy plant. Yeah, you're right. That's shadow mech. That's actually. I'm so glad that you said that. Is the hardest part is when you have a plant decline. So these plants have fungus gnats. So usually a plant that has fungus gnats, I hear it all the time where they're like, this doesn't affect it. Like the weed is still coming out good. Like the population is maintained. Like you can't see fungus gnats flying right now, right? I'll be honest with you, but they're fucking there. And it's like the thing is they're transferring all these diseases and not only transferring, but every single time that they penetrate the plant, whether that's like people think sometimes it's just like a little bit of leaf damage or a little bit of root damage or a little the thing is no, it's like they're snacking all over that. They're like the plant, like I said, is hormonally and environmentally and like the transfer of God, there's just so much stuff that opens opportunity to. Like you don't want to give it that. So it's like the faster you kill the insect, honestly, is the faster I've seen progression with this. The reason I want to show you how to clone is there's certain pesticides and treatments I'll use when I clone. You can't use all of them. Like, I don't know, maybe you can, but from what I've found is I can't use certain pesticides without being it's like they're too harsh on new cuttings, but I can use a lot. So if I do the new cuttings and it targets majority of everything, which is what I want to show everybody, is russet mites are pretty common. I'd say that's a bigger problem than even aphids from what I've seen recently. Is if you can get the aphids or the russets or the fungus gnats or the thrips, a lot of people are having problems with, is if you can get them at bay even for even 5 days to be able to cut that new growth or take the plant and start treating it for like 3 weeks. A plant this sick, I wish I had a better camera. I really do. Because I wanted to go into so much more detail. But a plant this sick, honestly, is probably going to take 11 months to fix. Like, we'll start seeing progress in 4 months, but it's ultimately going to take 11, 12 months before I can even run this strain. So, but I will be able to. And you'll see like you'll see this completely transform. You'll see this, it won't even look like the same strain. So when I see, cloning it back to health, that's exactly, you have to do it. And when I see a lot of people saying that you can't fix these things or kill it all, or honestly, I just disagree, because I'm just like, I do work with labs and have for years. I specialize in this. I have a lot of hours into all of it. But beyond all that, though, is like, I'm just like looking at the plant, seeing it, is if we can get the plant to evolve faster than the insects and the disease versus the opposite way, I think it's a better practice. And I think it creates more resilient plants for the long term. And I think that you can use this with not just cannabis, but all kinds of things. Jeff, spider mites are my enemy at the moment, and whiteflies. Oh my fucking goodness, do I hate whiteflies too, and spider mites. But whiteflies are like tough mother truckers. Like, you think they'd go down so easy, and it's like, no, they don't. Okay, what I can tell you, a couple different things. So, depending on how you'd like to approach something, or what phase you're at in your growth spaces, is Azamax is really, really good for both of those. Is spider mites and your whiteflies. This is what I would do personally, is if you use 29 mils per gallon of Azamax, what the bottle says, use the label, is if you use the 29 mils per gallon, is you can dunk them as clones. That's exactly what I do. Or if you're like running them and they're in veg and you got them go until flower, even 2 weeks, let's just say, is before you have bud sites coming, really, is I would spray the Azamax. You can spray it safely up till harvest. I don't, but you can. That just works really, really good for both of those things. I would spray it close together. I would do 5 days apart if I was battling those things, but I will tell you, you will set them back. The biggest mistake I see is if you do that 4 weeks in a row, your plants kind of get dry. is like the leaves will get a little, instead of like that velvet, is they'll start like kind of having the residual buildup. It's almost like a neem, so a little bit thicker, but it just works. If you can go through the temporary like annoyance of this, it's just worth it. Your plant loves it deep down. Um, but I think that if you do that, I think it's amazing. You can also use like burning sulfur. I know people get pissed when I say that. I know my hash makers are like so grossed out right now. But burning sulfur and spraying sulfur work completely differently, and not completely, sorry. Is they work differently though, and the residuals stay differently. So if spider mites, it works really, really well to burn sulfur. And you only have to do 4 to 5 hours, and you can do it up until that second week without having those residuals or that flavor. Like the plant will consume it by the time of your harvest, so you don't have to worry about that. Versus if you're spraying it, like if that's a concern of yours. But that works really good. Also cinnamon. This sounds weird. The spider mites, I don't think it will really set back. But you can do a combo action of this is, if you're really in a bind, is you can put the cinnamon on your medium for more your whiteflies and then do the Azamax on top. But I would do it at the same time. Super nice. Super nice. Um, I think that that's a good combination. Diatomaceous earth works good, but I hate it that you can only use diatomaceous earth. To me, where it's really effective is like that first use. You know what I mean? It's kind of annoying because I water my plants before I put it on because it has to be dry. But then it's like, I don't know, it's just diatomaceous earth I love, but it's like kind of one of those annoying things. The cinnamon I found more success in than diatomaceous earth. It helps with microbials. Usually if you have an insect, you're starting to see like PM is more susceptible, or Fusarium, Botrytis pythia, any of these weird funguses, or when you start seeing stuff out of balance, even if you have a living bed system, is you can just like softly sprinkle the cinnamon on it. It's the same cinnamon that you get from the grocery store. That's awesome. It's just awesome. Yeah, but spider mites are a pain in the ass. And if you're like, if you are a home grow, I would use Forbid or Avid. I know everybody's like repulsed when I say these things. Or Spinoside is if I had fungus gnats, whiteflies, spider mites, russet mites. Aphids is really something it just doesn't work on. I mean, even if the bottle says that, I just haven't found success with it. But those pesticides are nice because see people use them incorrectly is a problem here. But if you follow the label, it's 1.2 mils per gallon on Avid and Forbid. They're both expensive. I think it's $300 a bottle, but you'll probably have it forever. But it's 1.2 mils per gallon, I believe, from what the label requires. And I use it at 1 mil per gallon, and I just hit them right when they're that first transplant. And it's a 2-time application on most of those treatments, and it's amazing because it will take a plant like this, and it will just, the second, like I said, you get that insect to set back, that plant will genetically start restoring immediately. I swear to God, baby Jesus, you just see what you think. You just see what you think. Don't use it. I know rusty nails. You know what's disappointing is like Avid and Forbid, I only will use and like clone off of. Like I won't run a plant that I've treated with those, and that is because I'm like over the top with pesticides too. But I will use it to kill something and then take that clone so I can treat it, right? And I'll wear my PPE and follow your REI times, all those things. But that's why I say use it at 1.2 mils per gallon. Is I know a lot of people are using those products at way higher concentrations and way later into their crop than I'd probably recommend, or the bottle says. But I'm saying like use those pesticides if you really have a situation that's out of control and you don't need to run something immediately, but you're like, I'm gonna kill this pest and I'm gonna put these in this clone dome and I'm gonna have a fresh start. Is the half-life of those pesticides specifically will not be in the plant by the time you consume it, even if you used the plant that you sprayed. I really mean this. I've had this tested at parts per billion, and at parts per billion, it'd be really hard to like kind of like swoop under the rug. So yeah, I've tested this, but the plant is metabolizing it and consuming it, and but to me, I just like to kind of like go over the top. Is I'll do it 2 or 3 times out. Is I'll take the first plant that I sprayed with it and then take clones off of that and then take clones off of that plant and then run that plant. And it sounds like so much more time, but it's really like 3 months in total before you can get this rooted plant to go. And then usually like things like HLVD or Fusarium have been eradicated by that point. I don't know. Sorry guys for my rants all over the place. I think I'm going to probably try to wrap this up soon because I wish I had like a better, I wish I had like a better little camera follower. We'll get there one day. But I hope this was helpful in some ways. Sometimes I go off on these rants and I don't know if it's actually benefiting anybody, but I think that these are things that I wish somebody would have shown me earlier or I would have been open to. I was also like a living soil grower that never thought I would grow with rock wool or sterile or use a pesticide, or I was definitely the extreme opposite of of this. But the deeper I got with weed and the more nerdy and more like in love I got with plants is I was like, I can't watch a plant get ate alive by insects and be like, oh, I don't use pesticides. It's like, no. And then when you start seeing this detriment genetically as a whole and some of these other things is I'm like, we have to protect them. It's our job to restore and protect these genetics. We're the only people that care about them, you know? That's our responsibility. Anyways, to the chat, I love you guys. And I'm sorry about my technical difficulties tonight. It was a little hectic, but without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So thank you. And thank you for watching the show with AJ. I thought that was so freaking cool. AJ is awesome. And Maxwell, phenomenal guys. I feel like they're a really cool crew. I would like to get that number 2 cut and fix that one and show you guys. I think it would be cool. The only reason I say this is if you love fixing sick plants, some people are into it, some people aren't. I just think this is like a good experiment. Is if we take the time frame, is one day I'll go through the show and we'll cut clones together of these sick plants. Like I said, we have a guest next Sunday, so it probably won't be next Sunday, but maybe the Sunday after, or maybe I'll sneak in the middle of the week if we have a guest. But so you guys can see even like how there'll still be sick plants that we take clones off of this plant from, and we'll take a variety and a mix of them, and we'll still see sick and deaded out things. But we'll test and take the best test results. I'll ask Tacit to test this round, and we'll just keep testing as it goes, and it will be awesome because you guys can see it restore, and we can do it together. No. Yeah. Oh, that was a real good listen with AJ last time. Stony Creek, that's so nice of you. I feel like that is really nice. It's just nice to see non-perfect plants for a change. We all got a neglected corner in the tent. Hillbilly, thank you so freaking much for saying that. I was thinking that today. I was just like, man, I'm about to go ruin my name really fast. But I'm going to go down with pride. But yeah, I get tired of seeing like everybody shows their fire. And like I said, I bred this strain, you know, and one of them. And the reason I want to say this is like these strains are fire and they are beautiful. And I can show you healthy plants of them. But I just want to do the process together. So that way you guys can see these aren't fire. No. No, Facility. These are not fire. But I'm saying that you can see as they transform together instead of seeing like a healthy plant and like a healthy test result and a healthy all this shit is I want to show you the extreme opposite. I was just like, how fucked can these be? And which are my worst ones? And like I said, these are my worst ones. And I think they're pretty bad. So I think this is perfect. And I'm going to take clones from all of the parts and the tops of all these plants, and we'll do it like I said together so that you can see even when people say top growth versus bottom growth when you're restoring or this and that is I just seriously want you to see completely. And us to point out is I'll have Jason help me one night is to point out the parts of the plant that I'm taking them from and the really sick branches compared to the really healthy branches. We're going to do it. You know, that's going to be good. I don't know. You guys tell me. You tell me what shows we need to have this year. I know we have a lot of ladies. I feel so bad because the holidays got slammed. Like I said, the cops got called. All this shit was happening for like ever, it feels like. But I'm hoping that like we can start smooth sailing now and I can get some of these ladies on the show. I have like 10 growers that got back to me that are all sexy and cute and spicy. And I'm really thinking that they're doing big things though. They're not like naked. Okay. Like I'm not sorry guys, but these are like little boss babes. Okay. So I think that they're going to be coming on the show soon and I'm looking forward to that. And we do have a lot of other guests. We're going to get Duke back on. And probably the downside is my first couple of interviews with AJ and Duke and all the boys is I messed up because I was just like a nervous little button. But I think now is yeah, we'll get it all dialed in. Anyways, you guys let me know what shows you want to see though. And I will explain this better sometime or as we go through the cloning things so that we can see this genetic drift firsthand. You guys let me know. Well, I hope you have a beautiful night. I'm going to miss you. And I'm sorry for all the technical difficulties and I'm sorry for being late. Next week, we are on time. Okay? Okay? And we're going to have Dave. Dave is supposed to come on the show next week. He is, he's growing some fire. He's been doing, well, I won't say. He's been doing some cool stuff. And he's been placing in a lot of competitions for a strain that he bred. And he operates out of Denver. And it's going to be awesome. But you guys let me know what we're missing. And I freaking do love you. Okay? So peace and love. And I hope to see you soon. You guys have a good week this week. Thank you, chat, for hanging in there with me. All right. Peace and love.